Champlain College, class of 2019, good morning. You don't sound excited. Champlain College, class of 2019, good morning. No, I want more. Champlain College, class of 2019, good morning. And congratulations. It is a humbling honor to be here this morning, especially when I think of all the unique and powerful stories that have led each of you to this moment. Everyone here has a story that matters. And I would encourage you today to find a quiet place sometime this weekend to ponder that story and to trace the story of you that has brought you here. And let that story ignite your future. My name is David France, and I'm the founder and executive director of Revolution of Hope, an arts for social change organization in Boston. Recently an Amazon #1 best-selling author. I'm a dreamer. I'm a violinist, a social entrepreneur, a traveler. My mic doesn't work. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Is my mic working? It's not working. I'm cut off. Is my mic working? No. Good morning, good morning. Can you hear me? Awesome. So I'm a lot of things. I'm a traveler. My mother, who's here in the front row, she'd probably say that I'm a little bit crazy. But I'm also a storyteller. And this morning, Thomas Jefferson's words couldn't resonate more with me. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And my parents, they immigrated to this country from the West Indian island of Nevis, and never in their wildest dreams could they imagine that their last child, me, that I would find my way into the American dream through a free violin program. And so this morning, I want to take you on a journey through a few stories of my own journey into the American dream. And I hope that in some way you can find yourself, your story, in my story. So it's always hard to know where to begin to tell your story. So I'm going to start in the 19th century. And so, of course, you're thinking, this is going to be a long morning. So in 19th century France, there was a little boy, 7 years old, and his name was Antoine. And so Antoine was just a French 7-year-old. But one day, Antoine was kidnapped from his family for a ransom. And the kidnapper said, if you want your son back, you have to give us the ransom money. And his family said, of course. And so the family gave the kidnappers the ransom money. And the kidnappers, they took the ransom money, and they didn't return Antoine to his family. Instead, they took him on a ship and sailed him to the Caribbean and literally dropped him off. And so while this little boy was wandering on the beach by himself, somebody saw him and said, well, what are you doing here? And he started speaking French. And that man who found him on the beach decided to raise him. And so when Antoine grew up, he got married and he had a son. And he thought, well, no one on the island can pronounce my last name anyway, so I'm going to change my son's last name to the country I was kidnapped from, France. And then he said, I'm going to name my son after the man who found me on the beach. And that man's name was David. And I'm the third David France. And I am named after a stranger who gave his life away to a random white kid kidnapped wandering on the beach in the Caribbean. And my personal origin story reminds me how during amazing milestones like today, we often underestimate the power of ordinary people and how a normal person can be an unlikely vehicle for significant impact. So now I want you to imagine a world. Imagine a world without slums. Imagine a world without war. Imagine a world without injustice. Now, imagine that same world without Mother Teresa, without Gandhi, without Martin Luther King. You see, we all want a world without conflict and injustice, but at the same time, the best humans who've ever lived were revolutionaries who were responding to injustices, and we couldn't imagine our world without them. Our imperfect world sets the stage for the heroes who have brought hope to our world and have also left incredible legacies that have inspired scores of unknown heroes throughout history and today. I wonder if Pangloss from Candide was right. Could the world we have now, our imperfect world, could it be the best of all possible worlds? There are 4 things that are true of each of the 3 heroes I mentioned. None of them shied away from articulating the problems with the world or their community, but they each saw that problem as an opportunity. Then they put themselves at the intersection of the problem and the solution, and they all inevitably wouldn't see their dream realized, but would hand over their legacies to future generations. I call that POIL. Problem, opportunity, intersection, legacy. Class of 2019, repeat after me. Problem? But you know I need more energy. Problem? Opportunity. Intersection. Legacy. All great movements exist at the intersection of seemingly divergent ideas. As a lover of travel, I had the pleasure of one summer being lost in Brussels, and I came upon a violin shop, and I'm a violinist, so of course I went in to see what was happening inside this violin shop. And when I go in, I see a luthier, I see a violin maker, and he's making and he's fixing violins. But before I got to go to the maker of the violins to say hello, he moved to another counter, and he started serving coffee. And as my eye panned from the violin-making counter to the counter where he was serving coffee, I noticed that there were tables there, and there were people there. And so I walk up to him, and I curiously asked, what is this? And he said, it's a violin shop and a coffee shop. And he told me that he was a social guy, and making violins was too lonely. So he built a coffee shop onto his violin-making studio, and that moment changed my life. And the moral of the story isn't that you should all go and open violin-themed coffee shops, but it should free you to be yourselves. That violin maker in Brussels, he found a solution that was at the unique intersection of who he was, and we can do the same in our own lives. So after realizing that I could be the unique intersection of me, I wondered, okay, how can I combine my love for travel and music? So after I graduated from the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston, I went on a musical tour of Poland with 50 musicians. And the tour ended in Berlin, and I had this crazy idea. Rather than get on the plane with my 49 friends and fly back to the United States, I wanted to know if I could get from Berlin to London in 3 weeks with no money. So on the day my friends boarded the plane in Berlin, I instead opened my violin case at the airport and started playing to see if I could play my way across Europe. And my journey began. And my friends, they started following my status updates on Facebook to see if I was still alive. And eventually, after a wild 3 weeks, I made it to London. And while flying back to Boston, I realized I learned 3 life-changing lessons. You could travel with a lot less stuff than you think. You don't need a lot of stuff. You could travel with a lot less money than you think. You don't need a lot of money. And if you take a leap of faith, a great adventure could await. And so at that time, I learned these principles. I had no idea that they would be the building blocks to building an inner city youth orchestra. And so like I said, I'm the son of West Indian immigrants from the island of Nevis. My parents are here. Give my parents a round of applause. Stand up. They're on the front row. So my mother, thank you. Give your own parents a round of applause. Give a round of applause to your parents. Thank you. So my mother has 18 brothers and sisters, and my father has 19 brothers and sisters. And they came to the United States in search of the American dream. And so when we were growing up, my parents said, okay, you're in the United States. You can be whatever you wanted. And all my siblings became track stars. And I thought, why run when you can eat? And so I was so shy that the kids in my school, they thought I was a mute. And so when I was 7 years old, I was given a chance to learn the violin through a free violin program. And I needed a voice, and the violin became my voice. But when I started, my black friends, they said, playing the violin is for white people. And my white friends said, playing the violin is for white people. And my own teachers, they didn't expect much of me because I was black. And so I found myself really fighting institutions, really trying to demand the education that was promised me. But in 2009, have you guys ever heard of the website YouTube? YouTube, okay. So in 2009, YouTube had their first ever international contest. They wanted to create the first orchestra auditioned on the internet. And so I thought, this is my chance to equalize the playing field. All I have to do is practice more than everyone else in the world. And so I practiced and I auditioned. And a couple months later, I found out that I won. And my father rented a van, and he filled it with as many of my aunts and uncles as could fit in the van. Not all 37. But I had a secret. I was going to be one of the concert masters of the orchestra. I was going to be the lead violinist. And so after one of the pieces in the concert, the lights go down. And when the lights came up, I was in the first chair. And that moment was a realization of my parents' American dream. They could come from a poor country, from 37 siblings, and me, their last child, born in the United States, through a free violin program, could lead an international orchestra at Carnegie Hall. Thank you. Thank you. But that wasn't enough. And I started to think about, what about those who didn't have access to the kind of training that I fought for? And I started to think about, how can I democratize access to classical music? So shortly after winning the YouTube contest, I went back to Bermuda, where I was living at the time, and I saw videos from this movement out of Venezuela called El Sistema, which is an initiative founded by Dr. Jose Antonio Abreu that uses music to transform the lives of kids in some of Venezuela's poorest villages. It started 40 years ago with just 11 kids, and now over 500,000 kids are playing in ensembles. And so in 2011, I won a fellowship to study El Sistema in Boston and in Venezuela. And during my last week in Venezuela, we were in a city called Coro, and I met a woman named Isandra Campos. So Isandra Campos, she's a mother of 5, and a year before I met her, she moved out of her house with her kids, in with her mother, so that she could use her home as a place where an orchestra could be formed, as a music program. 7 days a week, she has a music program in her house, a morning program for the kids to go to school in the afternoon, an afternoon program for the kids to go to school in the morning, and in the back of the house, she raises chickens. And so she took me to the back of the house one day, and she said, everyone that comes here has to pick the eggs. So here I am in the back of the house picking eggs. I had never done that before. I thought I was on an Easter egg hunt. And she said, do you know what I do with these eggs? And I thought, well, there's a lot of kids here. Maybe you scramble them. and she slapped me across the face. She said, no, I sell them. And she told me she sells the eggs for $1 each, and that's how she buys the music for the kids. And I realized there were no longer any excuses. And I started to wonder, on behalf of what community would I move out of my house and sell chicken eggs? So I came back to Boston to launch Revolution of Hope. And when I was in school, I was on a full scholarship. So when I graduated, they stopped sending me checks. And I couldn't afford my rent, and so I was homeless. And there were many nights I slept behind the aquarium in downtown Boston. And people often asked, how did you start Revolution of Hope while you were homeless? And I say, well, I used POIL. Growing up in Connecticut, I saw a problem. I couldn't understand how a state with so many rich towns in the country, some of the richest towns in the country, could have a public education system that was so unequal. And this is true all over the United States. But I saw this as an incredible opportunity. I get the chance to create a world-class youth orchestra in the hood. So I put my interest in music at the intersection of educational disparities and a hopeful future for inner city youth. And the problem of not having any money actually created a bridge to previously isolated communities. So what did we need? We needed instruments. And so we went to Berklee College of Music, and I know I'm a violinist. I know what a violin case looks like. I know what a cello case looks like. So we stood on the sidewalk of some of the music schools in Boston, and when anybody came out with an instrument case that looked like the ones we needed, we say, hey, if you play the cello and you go to Berklee, you probably have another cello somewhere. Oh, you do? Would you want to donate that cello on behalf of a kid in Roxbury? And a month later, we had 30 donated instruments. And so then we needed teachers. And so we engaged musicians who caught a vision for this intersection of music and social justice. And then we needed a space. So a principal at a school in Roxbury gave us the gym they weren't using after school. And we needed kids. So a bunch of curious teenagers have come on board this adventure of building an inner city youth orchestra. And we're an orchestra, so we needed performance venues. So we partnered with institutions that seemed out of reach for so many inner city youth. And we've had performances at Harvard, and the Miss Massachusetts United States beauty pageant, and Microsoft, and the inauguration of the governor of Massachusetts. And the music became a bridge connecting so many communities that previously had nothing to do with each other. And now they are not only coexisting, but they have become a part of each other's lives. So what's our legacy? We've had a unique opportunity to build leadership capacity in our youth. Because we don't have enough teachers, we've trained the students to be teachers, and they're helping with administration. And the way in which we've responded to our needs have given the students more ownership of the program and turned them into leaders. So the other day, one of my students, he's one of the youngest and the shortest, he asked me, Mr. France, why do you make me serve the snacks to everyone every day? And I said, well, I'm training you to be the boss. Don't you want to be the boss? And another student who overheard him, she said, okay, when you retire, which one of us is going to run the program? And first I thought, retire? How old do you think I am? Retire. And I said, well, you all will as a team. And so many programs that start with all the money needed can bring in outsiders to run the program, but 20 years later, usually still need those outsiders to continue to keep things going. But our students see themselves as the future of this program. And so we now, 6 years later, we meet 5 days a week for 3 hours a day after school in the heart of inner city of Boston, Roxbury. And when I think of Thomas Jefferson's words, I realize for so many of these young people, music is their way into the American dream. Ordinary people can make a difference. And I hope this model can be useful to you. Remember POIL. First, don't be shy. Don't shy away from identifying the problems in our world, but nurture an ability to look beyond the problems for the opportunities therein. Then put yourselves and what makes you unique at the intersection of the problem and the solution, and then blaze a trail that creates a sustainable legacy beyond your lives. When I think about that Brussels story, I know you have all the tools you need. You don't need a lot of stuff. You don't need a lot of money. And if you take a leap of faith, a great adventure may await you. None of history's heroes would exist in a perfect world. I'm going to say that again. None of history's heroes would exist in a perfect world. But I think this is the best of all possible worlds. And if you, Champlain College class of 2019, if you put yourselves at the intersection of some of life's biggest hurdles, what you come up with, your solutions, might not only be unique, they just might change the world. Thank you.